And I think NFTs posed this challenge, which was how do we hyper align a creator with their community and have nothing in between? What could happen, right? That was like the big thing. And so
This episode is brought to you by Uphold, which is a great crypto platform that makes it easy to buy, sell, and stake crypto assets. Uphold has over 300 plus cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin and all the top altcoins, and they offer crypto staking on over 19 crypto assets. I've been a user of the platform for many years. They are safe and reliable. They don't commingle or lend out your crypto funds, and they are 100% reserved. You can review their transparency report. Uphold also offers an amazing rewards program where you can earn up to 5.25% on stablecoins. This rewards program also allows you to get 24-hour early access to new tokens that they list. And to participate, you just simply have to open the app once per month, deposit $50 once per month, and trade $50 once per month. And the stablecoins that they support includes Ripple's RLUSD. You can earn up to 5% on that stablecoin and 5.25% on USBC. So if you'd like to learn more about Uphold and all the great services they offer, visit the link in the description. Welcome into the Thinking Crypto podcast. I'm your host, Tony Edward, and joining me today is Ash Pampati, who is the head of ecosystem at the Aptos Foundation. Ash, great to have you on.
thanks, Tony. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, Ash, I'm really excited to speak with you, not only about Aptos, but your background in working at YouTube and working with different initiatives around the creator economy, and myself being a creator. And I want to explore different ideas and thoughts with you around that and how that fits into Web3. But before we get to all that, I'd love to get to know you a bit better. Tell us about yourself, where you're from, and your professional background.
Yeah, that's great. I'm Ash. I have lived in New York for about 19 years, so I'm technically a New Yorker, but grew up in rural Eastern Kentucky, which was an exciting character building experience. I got into working for software companies primarily through a company called Spotify. So when it was launching in the US, it was a product I fell in love with. I was actually VPNing it for 12 months prior when it wasn't available in the US. Joined as
Wow.
one of the first marketers there to lead growth marketing, and then graduated over to the big mothership of Google to focus on music product growth across the company. And then I've been in Web3 professionally since 2022, and now here at Aptos Foundation leading the ecosystem.
So when did you first well, you mentioned the year you kind of made the transition, but what was your first encounter with crypto or blockchain, and what was your aha moment, and how did that lead to you jumping industries?
Well, I can't lie and say I was a Bitcoin maxi on the forums. That's not when I got onboarded. I actually got onboarded while I was at YouTube. My primary focus there was how do we take YouTube, which has pioneered and trailblazed the native web creator economy, and divert that energy towards artists and musicians who are kind of held back by legacy systems. I saw creators and video creators going up and to the right in terms of their exposure, the money they were generating, the agency they had over their business. And I saw artists and musicians kind of stuck in this stasis. They weren't extracting enough value from the internet in terms of monetization. They weren't able to decide where their content could be. They weren't able to own their fans. And so that was a nut I was trying to crack over the 7.5 years I was over there. And then about 2021, we saw the NFT craze happening on ETH, but I was actually introduced to NFTs on Solana. And so in my kind of research, because every year, I was the one who would compile all the fresh ideas to present to the CEO and say, hey, we need to do this. Here's the justification. So even starting in 2021, I was like, we need to explore Web3. There's a burgeoning creator economy over there. I don't think that YouTube is set up to actually attract this segment of creators. And it's the first time we've probably been boxed out from a native internet creator economy. And so, I was doing my explorations. I was obviously seeing NFTs kind of break through the mainstream. But I was onboarded through Solana, so Magic Eden and Phantom. And in that experience, I kind of experienced the opposite of the horror stories I would see on Reddit of people trying to buy NFTs, whether it's like paying exorbitant gas fees or high floor prices or transactions not coming through. I went into Phantom, I went into Magic Eden, bought my first NFT, and the UX was as smooth as what I was accustomed to as a Web2 user. And that's when I said, okay, like I need to fully jump in both feet in this space. I can't wait till YouTube, with all of its diversified interest areas, to kind of come along with the new economy that's being built out here. And so I left fully 2 feet in, joined a company called Metaplex, which spun out of Solana Labs, which was the base layer of token infrastructure for Solana. So that's how I got introduced and very quickly jumped in the boat to work professionally.
That's amazing. As a creator, I'm waiting for the day where YouTube integrates blockchain for profiles, web monetization, maybe payouts and tokens, and even some sort of NFT marketplace built in some way where I can reward my subscribers. Were there any talks about those type of things? I don't know if you can disclose that if you're under NDA and things like that, but were there any talks about those things down the road?
So we were always trying to think of ways in which creators could build direct relationships with their users or their viewers or their fans, and also monetize that more directly so that they had more control, whether it's the brands they wanted to support or the margin they wanted to get from like the revenue that was generating on platform. Advertising is this big beast, right? And really the majority of revenue from advertising comes from like 7 big CPG brands, right?
Yeah.
And so those folks have a very specific opinion on where they want their content to be exposed, and where they're willing to pay for that premium inventory. And so for creators, they may flood into that zone for a period of time, but they also may graduate out of it when they have a more niche or loyal audience. And so what we were always trying to figure out is when a creator kind of, either before they hit that leap into the public mainstream consciousness where they're at the front page of YouTube and they're alongside Netflix shows and HBO shows, and they're creating content on par, what can we do to create stickiness? And so there was a lot of thoughts around digital goods. There was a lot of thoughts around, pay gated content for exclusive, I can pay to subscribe to Mr. Beast's channel to get exclusive content. But, from my personal opinion and not speaking on behalf of YouTube, this was always a hard challenge to solve for the creator, in the sense that they were already working so hard to get into that mainstream exposure. Like the amount of content you need to create, I mean, I'm sure, Tony, yourself, right? Like the amount of velocity you need to have to push out content to stay on beat, that's like, you're basically like running on a treadmill at full speed, and you're probably, any money you're getting, you're putting back into the content, right? So what additional capacity does the creator have to like start to support new verticals that may have different monetization principles? And so you have to do that balance of, okay, I need to get into the mainstream, right? I need to break through on the front page algorithm, and it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time, and there's tons of people competing with me. Can I clone myself, right, to like actually support these other verticals? And the majority of the answer was no. Like creators didn't have the capacity to say, now I do content for pay gated folks, or now like I have a bunch of new things to like sell digital goods. And And so for me, that's generally, I think, a core insight from that was the way in which Web2 generally works, which is like broad distribution model, works for a few. And unless you're that few, you're kind of out on path to pasture with being able to like earn a living being a creator. And so my perspective was there needs to be a new model, and that model needs to be supported by great professionals working in it.
So on that note of that new model, do you see eventually YouTube and all these platforms are going to have to capitulate in one way or the other to integrate into Web3? Because I don't know, usually there's that first mover who's the big domino to fall, and then game theory plays out. How do you see that maybe in 5 years? Is it YouTube that capitulates because they're like, hey, we need to catch up and we need to stay ahead of the curve?
I don't, I can't anticipate YouTube capitulating on something that extreme. My perspective with a lot of these traditional media technology firms is that the creator is the algorithm.
Mm.
Like their algorithm becomes the creator. And that creator can wear many different hats. It can have very different voices. It can be from many different places. But that's essentially what's happening, right? I mean, you see other companies just creating their own content. They're like scanning the data, they're seeing what people are vibing with, and they're like making a movie or a show like in the next 3 months. And like they made it, you know what I mean? And that's
Hmm.
what's on the front page. The question to me is, can they continue to do that if they don't have a pipeline of long tail creators continuing to engage with the platform? And so, from my perspective, I don't know what the time horizon is on whether that becomes a problem, but eventually you could imagine it would, right? So, if you don't have a two-way economy and you don't have two-way signal, like your algorithm isn't going to be as good to produce the thing that the user or your viewer would want. And I think an element to that is, um, can I be a creator on your platform and not have another job if I only have 1,000 subscribers?
Hmm.
That's the question, right? Like, can I earn a living, right? Being someone who only has 1,000 subscribers, and maybe I'm not creating content to have 1 million subscribers, right? Um, and I think that's like the question yet to be answered. And I already see it. Like, I'm from the music industry, from a tech perspective. You see a lot of artists now who could have been great getting a job and stop being artists.
Hmm.
Like you're seeing that every single day, right? And the question is, what happens when that thing prolongs for a period of time? And my perspective from where I've always worked is nothing good happens. We don't get good experiences. We don't get good content. We don't actually build interests that are unique as people. Um, but I don't know the time horizon on when that would be felt, or when a huge company like YouTube would feel like they need to make a shift.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't know what that catalyst is myself, but I think about these things being in Web3 and, certain industries, what would be the tipping point for mainstream adoption. And I don't know if it has to be other brands out there, whether it's in the sports or gaming world, where they onboard a ton of people on chain with via NFTs, and then the public in general becomes more educated and aware of this. And then they're like, hey, why can't I get it from Mr. Beast? And Mr. Beast then says, okay, I can offer it, but I can't offer it on YouTube. I want you off YouTube. Maybe that's where YouTube's like, no, I don't want them to leave. I want them to stay on the platform.
Hmm.
Maybe it's
Hmm.
something like that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say that because when I was there, we would often debate, right? Like, YouTube, kind of from its core in terms of like the thesis of why it was important to society was it was like the Library of Alexandria, like in today's age.
Mm.
Anything you could have wanted to know, ever know, was there. Now, principally, we had to start to peel back that notion because now you have creators who became brands, you have music, you have all of these things that um, are meant to want to be everywhere, right? So not just YouTube, but if YouTube has to have everything there, it really creates a big risk exposure for them to like just basically keep paying upwards and upwards of everything, like, of licensing to like keep everything there. So
Mm.
I think where I kind of, from my vantage point at the company, we kind of sat and said, actually, you know what? It's a distribution platform. So like if you're an artist and you have an album coming out, we don't need the whole album on there, but you should probably create a video that's compelling, that's interesting, or a series of videos that fits with what we know the algorithm rewards to push people to that thing. And we always kind of position it as advertising that pays. You know what I mean? If you invest in the platform and you push the right content and you actually understand how thumbnails work and like how the algorithm is triggered and what atomic networks of creators you have to have promote you and how comments like input into like your velocity for viewership, that can be a jumping off point for you to like push people to deeper experiences. And by the way, you get paid, like that's monetized and everything. So it was kind of a slight nuance in terms of how we pivoted our positioning because I think that's true, right? And I think a lot of people use YouTube as that front door to like push something
Yeah.
elsewhere. Yeah. But you
Well,
know, if YouTube continues to being an effective distribution platform for creators to push people in different areas, it will always be important.
mm, I appreciate that perspective. I'm really fascinated by what's going to happen with YouTube and the creator economy, and given how big the platform is. But we'll have to wait and see. So on
Yeah.
that note, though, is Aptos, you and the folks at Aptos, going knocking the door of these companies saying, "Hey, let's explore Web3 together"?
Yeah. So I think the history of Aptos definitely, so like, you know, crypto is kind of these cycles of huge catalytic moments that propel or pull forward adoption. And so I think I was onboarded with NFTs. I wasn't onboarded with ICOs or Bitcoin mining or whatever. Um, and I think NFTs posed this challenge, which was how do we hyper align a creator with their community and have nothing in between? What could happen? Right. That was like the big thing. And so when I was in the Solana ecosystem, that was everything, right? Like, because that's what kind of bootstrapped a lot of the ecosystem was this attention around NFTs, the financialization of communities, the discourse within communities of why this project is the best, why that project isn't the best, the transfer of communities from one community to another. There was so much communal activity, right? That bootstrapped all these products, Phantom, like Magic Eden, like, you know, and really set the foundation for, I think, what like truly financialized communities became, which were meme coins, right? And that kind of like sprouted out. I think for a blockchain like Aptos, you know, we need to push to where we think the puck is going. And so, you know, I think for us NFTs, we have a vibrant like collection and community of NFTs on Aptos, but I kind of see them as a way in which to have a signal within the ecosystem of loyal supporters that are highly networked. That if you're a new project coming to Aptos and you tap into those, you'll immediately be distributed. It's kind of like these micro radio towers, right? That have a brand presence online because everyone has a PFP or, you know, can socially signal. And there's a Discord where people are like meeting up and talking all day about every topic in the world. And so I think they're important to basically be these radio towers to help ecosystems bootstrap and also just represent the brand of Aptos from a bottoms up perspective. So I think in the traditional sense of what NFTs were represented as, that's still important. But on the technology perspective of what an NFT is, to me, it is the way I think about it is a better retention mechanism, which would thus give you better monetization of your customers, right? So I think about it as every, you know, B2C or B2B app, like in Web2, right? They have, you know, if they're a good operating team, they really have a tight growth funnel analysis and they monitor each element of that, right? Of to say, okay, when someone signs up, on day one, what activities are they taking? Based on those activities, what's the drop off to day two retention? and then you zoom out all the way to 30-day retention, and now you're all of a sudden thinking about retention overall for your product, and you make decisions. NFTs to me are, if executed the right way as a core technology, a better way to drive retention and less churn from that moment you log in and use the app, right? And so I think as a core technology, they're actually going to be an accelerant to how scaling B2C or B2B apps actually drive monetization.
Interesting. And do you foresee there being what may be called dynamic NFTs that maybe the longer you're a customer or you're loyal to the brand, it the NFT continues to unlock and open up new things for you. So it's not just okay, it's static monkey JPEG, but it's more than that, right? And it kind of like a digital key, so to speak. It just unlocks new features and things the longer you're a customer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the other kind of like adjacent application to the two things I mentioned, which is it is an identity token in a way. Now, what context that identity is contextualized is dependent, right? It could be a soul-bound NFT where like this is only for you, and because you have this, it's locked to you. You can't even transfer it to anyone else,
Mhm.
even if I want to pay. It could be an identity of you within a community. So you have a unique PFP that's like one of one, and you're part of a community that everyone else has a different one on one, and that's you. Like I'm Punk XYZ, like you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so I think the concept of what is an identity in a truly permissionless and trustless world, NFTs have brought a lot of context to. But I certainly think there's tons more room to establish what I guess like the killer use case is.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, for those who may not know about Aptos, tell us a bit about the blockchain and what makes it different from other blockchains.
Yeah, so Aptos is a highly performant layer one blockchain built with a native programming language called Move. It was actually incubated or started with the Libra DM project at Meta, which, if some of your viewers may know or you may know, Tony, was essentially the plan or the strategy to transfer value across Meta's super app economy. So you have Instagram, you have WhatsApp, right? You have Facebook itself. How can those users actually send assets or money across that ecosystem? Well, you need a blockchain to do that. And you probably need a currency on that blockchain to do that. So Aptos was principle by principle the exact architecture of what was being built at Meta. And obviously in 2020, that project was shut down. And so what happened was Aptos spun out and became available to everyone as a highly performant L1. I would say the way I think about Aptos is, you know, you had Ethereum, which was smart contracts, right? But very now looking back, hard to use for any scalable use case, right? Then you had layer twos kind of building on top of that. Then you had Solana, right? And a few other chains, but Solana is the one we know, which was basically like, no, this needs to be like amazing UX and we're really fast. And then there's this another tranche of blockchains, which are even faster, more performant. And Aptos is one of the leading ones. I would say the thing that adds additional context to Aptos' specific architecture is Move, the native programming language of Move. And Move was developed at Meta specifically for them because they needed a higher level of security on the smart contract level to manage possibly the trillions of dollars that would pass through their economy. So smart contract architecture outside of that was not sufficient for Meta's use case. So we are the bearer of those fruits. And when you think about Aptos's positioning in the market, I would say in the past couple of years, we've really built a lot of headway with institutions that really see blockchain as the future to power their business. So companies like BlackRock with the Biddle Fund or Franklin Templeton and Aave now, who is going through governance to come to mainnet as the first non-EVM chain with Aptos. they all look at security and performance and reliability, right? They're not making any sort of guesses in this framework. And so when you audit and kind of look at Aptos from that context, it's a no-brainer in terms of those things. Now, when I think about where we want to go, what we want to do as a network is establish successful businesses and founders on Aptos. So that's kind of my job, like building an ecosystem. What does that mean? It's having successful founders and projects within the ecosystem, building on the Aptos network and pushing the mission forward in their opinionated way. That's really kind of the next phase of Aptos.
Talk to us a bit about the building. So let's say I'm a CEO listening to this podcast once it goes live, right? And I want to build on Aptos. Am I building a layer two on Aptos? How does that work if I want to create maybe my own network, so to speak?
So we built the L1, so you never need to build a layer two. Traditionally in the sense of why layer twos is because the base layer isn't proficient enough at handling what you need to handle. So with Ethereum, it's slow, or high gas fees. And so it forced all of these abstraction layers, right, to come and say, well, we can't support a social app on Ethereum. So we're going to build an L2 to abstract some of that away to make it easier. With highly performant L1s, the goal is to not have or need an L2 to manage a task, right? That's why we were built. That's why, the beauty of why we were built is we were built to handle Instagram or WhatsApp level of connectivity. Now, I think there are ways in what people do is they build protocols or applications on Aptos, right? So if you were building in the trading space, you would build a protocol on top of Aptos, right? So Aptos is the network. You build a protocol to manage the network a certain way. But you don't have to manage a blockchain. You just focus on your customer, you focus on your use case, and the rest is kind of set for you.
Got it. And then from a privacy standpoint, so if you have a variety of companies building on Aptos, what is the infrastructure there to prevent certain data from being public and things like that?
It's a really good question. I mean, I think it's a concept that the industry is discussing, right? So when you think about native crypto builders, their intention is to tap into shared liquidity and understanding of what's happening, right? That's why open and permissionless networks have been really successful at bootstrapping startups, right? Yeah. I mean, you know what I mean? You see you see a startup incubate for 1 month, go to mainnet, launch, drive users. Now they're making tens, if not hundreds of millions of revenue. That's because of the built-in network and liquidity, right, that ecosystems have managed to do. The question then comes down to, okay, that next layer of enterprise or businesses or retail users, what will it take for them to do simple things, right, for in their day or for their customers? And when I think about what that is privacy is a big piece, right? Because blockchains are, it's a record of something happening, but you may have a reason to make sure that record isn't fully public, or let's say it needs to be partially private. Right. Number one. Number two is the transactions themselves. If we are using on-chain rails to send payments to my landlord, right? Do I want that transaction to be public, that every month I'm sending so and so to this address and this is my address? No, absolutely not, right? And so I think I think we will see a ton of there's already a lot of companies that are already thinking about privacy, as you know, in the blockchain space. But I think you will see more ideas from networks like us on how to manage these controls, and how to leave choice up to the customer, the builder, right, or the user to toggle them. because I think we are not going to get wide scale mainstream adoption by having all of the information publicly for any bad actor to go and use for their own advantage.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. There's a follow-up question I have because you mentioned, Aptos's history and genesis coming out from Facebook and things like that. I don't know if you can answer this, but there was a report recently about Facebook looking to go back to that DM project, maybe not in the same capacity, but doing some sort of stablecoin now that stablecoin legislation is on the way. Are you guys going back to your colleagues or the folks there at Facebook saying, "Hey, this is the chain to do it on," or anything like that?
We always have connectivity with folks like Meta, but like every big company that's exploring crypto. I can't really speak on, where they're at with their development phase or their psychology around solving the problem. No, I can't speak on behalf of them.
Yeah, I'm curious as to what they're going to do because I know when DM was being worked on, Congress came with a sledgehammer and shut that down, right? And I think we look back in hindsight and we get why they weren't ready. The government was not ready at all to handle this and to monitor it. But now that legislation's coming, folks are a bit more educated as to what's happening. It looks like a lot of these companies can now create their own stable coins within their ecosystem. And it's, I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be oversaturation, but it's fascinating. What do you think about, maybe Microsoft is going to go next, Google, I don't know, creating their own stablecoins?
Yeah, I mean, this is just me giving you an opinion from where I see the market.
Sure.
Um, it is an existential motive for the United States to make sure the stablecoin that's adopted is pegged to the dollar. You know what I mean? So like this is happening. This is the next frontier of, okay, what's this actually going to be pegged to that's going to the biggest thing since the concept of global free trade. You know what I mean? Like, and so I don't think I don't think it's about saturation of number of stable coins. It's more about what are those stable coins pegged to in value?
Mm.
What are they anchored to? And so that's why I think you see so much openness, right, today in terms of stablecoin regulation. I know that's still yet to be determined, but obviously we in the industry are very excited about where we're sitting in terms of the doorstep. In terms of how that's executed across a variety of verticals, let's see, right? Like, sure, like every company can have their own, unique stable coin, but why, right? What are they trying to do with it? The natural need for now today as we sit for the foreseeable future is, unless everywhere accepts stablecoin as a transfer of value, you will always need to on and off ramp its fiat and like pay your house or do this thing, right? So
Right.
I think it's still kind of TBD in terms of the actual execution. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to talk about some of the recent developments, news items that I saw around Aptos. And first is $200 million in a new DeFi grant or DeFi grants and investments. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So for Aptos, when you think about a highly performant blockchain existing in today's market, what should its focus be? And that's a question that every ecosystem or blockchain founder is asked, right? Blockchains can do many things, but given we are in such an emergent and exciting industry, what opinion are you taking, right? In terms of the directionality from the tech that you're building, from the Aptos Lab side to the startups you're onboarding from the Aptos Foundation side. And my perspective is trading within crypto markets as a product market fit for multiple cycles. That is only going to accelerate in terms of adoption with the institutional interests. DeFi is the backbone, but there will be additional ideas and use cases brought into the fold, right? So when you think about what is DeFi today, it's risk tolerance versus yields, it's trading crypto native assets. Maybe in other ecosystems, it's trading, creator assets or meme coins or speculating on trends in the market. And so what I believe is going to happen is you're going to see highly liquid assets start coming on chain that have been off chain, equities, gold, things in between. And so for me, what I wanted to basically state is we are fully invested in seeing a diverse and robust DeFi and trading ecosystem. And in that kind of post, I kind of detailed some of the elements of products and use cases that we need. And so every day from the Aptos Foundation side and my team side, we go and try to find founders building in those interesting areas. And so, the fund is kind of broken down as a signal in the sense that we invest in these projects. We also help accelerate those projects to come to market and things like that. So that's like a huge focus for us, is having a robust trading environment on Aptos. And we believe that us as a blockchain finally brings the technology to a Web2 like experience. So trading on Robinhood is no different than trading on a crypto native app. But instead here, it's fully decentralized. You have a much more diverse portfolio of assets you can participate in. And you can participate in interesting DeFi experiences as well. So that's kind of what our focus has been, and that was the flag in the sand to show where we're going.
That's great. And then the other item I read was Rhuna, if I'm saying that right, an AI-driven white label event infrastructure platform. You guys formed a partnership with them.
Yeah, Runa is an exciting project. One of the biggest, they throw some of the biggest festival networks in the world. Very tech forward founders. And what's interesting about Runa is going back to what I said earlier about NFTs and the underlying technology of what they can do. They're building deeper and more retentive connections with people who go to festivals and what happens after.
Sure.
And so for us, that's an exciting project business to bring on Aptos. And for them, they can't go on any blockchain. They have to be on the fastest and most performant blockchain, right? Because their consumer is not someone who's going to tolerate something going down. They could just use something else, right, in Web2 to manage that experience. So Runa is kind of a flagship partner that we're bringing into the ecosystem, but it is a representation of products and founders that we believe can thrive on Aptos.
That's great. And where do you see kind of the convergence of AI and blockchain? How is that playing out? Are they kind of is it kind of a symbiotic relationship where they benefit each other? Blockchain being used to police AI in some way, deepfakes and all that, while AI is enhancing blockchain attributes?
Yeah, I mean, my personal perspective is I think less about blockchaining policing AI and more about how is AI an accelerant to make blockchains more useful. And I think about that in a few capacities. One is trading, right? So how does AI actually help folks manage their risk tolerance and return in a systematic way, right? Because using or even interacting with DeFi, no matter what ecosystem you are in, is not even remotely close for just a regular user who has 100 things going on in their day, right? So I think about AI as a way in which to enhance that experience, to broaden the customer base, to bring more people in. Same thing with payments. When I think about from an agentic framework, if they're supposed to do things for us, what do they do when they need to pay for something? What are they going to do? What is an agent going to do? Are they going to go to a bank and then get into your account? No, they're going to use blockchain.
Yeah.
They're going to use stable coins. They're going to do microtransactions. Like you could imagine a world where, I don't know, self-driving cars, right? Everyone is in a self-driving car, and my car, I need to overtake this car. Maybe this car needs to pay a microtransaction to that car so it can actually, coordinate between each other. This is a very radical example, but you can see where I'm going with it. What are they going to use? They're going to use blockchains and on-chain rails because you can send a cent for no cost. Where can you send a cent to someone in traditional banking rails? You can't send a cent to anyone. AI will need to, right? They will need to be able to send things at that level and at a higher frequency to manage the coordination of the Internet of Things. Um, I think there's a third area which I haven't gone that deep into, but you have all of these large language models like ChatGPT, Anthropic, and Grok, and all of these things that all have their own way of kind of coming up with what you want. What if you were someone who said, I want to take this from ChatGPT, I want to take this from Grok, I want to take this, and I want to localize my LLM. And there's things blockchains can do to increase transparency of code across those things, and developer tooling to help people who want to build, I don't know, their own personalized LLM. um, but that's a much more greener pasture in terms of what can be done.
Yeah, and I'm really fascinated by that, and to see how that unfolds. It just seems that there's a lot of possibilities, and I'm exploring on my end how to create maybe an AI agent and see how it can be leveraged in different ways, and I can monetize it. But still,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I look at crypto and AI as two parallel tracks. And what I'm excited about is whenever we look at a founder, whenever we see a project, whether it's trading or payments, the question we always ask and dive into is how are you thinking about AI to level up your experience? Right? We always go through that question and answer. And more often than not, most of the founders have a good answer.
hmm. What's on your roadmap? What can you share that we can expect?
We don't really have a roadmap, right? We're an ecosystem. So our roadmap is finding great founders. Um, but generally, what we are looking for from a trading perspective is folks that are building, there's a couple things. Folks that are building interesting trading environments to tokenize real world assets. Right? A lot of the only real used real world asset right now is stablecoins, but there's tons of real world assets that are tokenized or can be tokenized. How do those things get utilized in a DeFi environment for a regular user? That's an area in which that we're hyper focused on. When I think about payments, what I'm really looking for is the next founder or project that's going to build the next HR payment software fully on chain, or the next P2P payments app fully on chain using stables. And one of the ideas that is interesting for me with kind of the adoption and pull forward institutional and mainstream interest in stablecoins is there are markets in the world that need stable coins from an existential perspective. Their local currency is debased, their government can't be trusted, but there's high intellectual capital in those markets, right? There's a broad culture of education and innovation and all these things. And so with the adoption of stable coins and kind of this true global economy, what you're going to start to see is the average revenue per user, right, in Web3 outpace in the average revenue per user in Web 2 in emerging markets, right? Because Web 2 can't solve this problem. So, unless an advertiser can monetize and pay the top dollar fee for that inventory in that market, or that user can pay $12 a month for a subscription, there's no answer to generating revenue from those users directly in emerging markets. In Web3, that's going to be different, right?
Yeah.
You're basically going to have stable coins as like the way in which to transfer value at speed and reliability. The folks that are building or innovating or incubating in emerging markets now have higher purchasing power. And you can basically start to see unicorns just be built solely in these localized markets, which is going to be fascinating to see. So that's kind of, it's less of a roadmap because we're not a product and tech company, but a focus of where you'll see us onboarding new projects.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. I'd love to get your take on the crypto market at large and legislation on the cusp of being passed. I saw Avery Chang, the CEO Aptos Labs, testify this morning on Capitol Hill. Seems like things are moving in the right direction. We have a much more favorable environment. How do you feel being on the building side and maybe under less pressure after the past 4 years?
Yeah, I I feel lucky that I came at a time where so many people went through the pain to let us be able to have this conversation,
Mm.
for more than a decade, 15 years, right? People have been pushing the space forward, pushing for decentralization, pushing for self-sovereignty, um, paid for the price of being first to push for that. And now we're here at the moment where everyone sees blockchain as a core technology to move society forward. And so, Avery, who's the CEO of Aptos Labs, I'm very grateful to him for going and speaking to the public who have tons of variant concerns, right, in terms of their their market, their economy, how they're going to put food on the table, and being able to explain blockchain in a way in which that they can understand and also start to apply to manage their own outcomes. That's where we're at, and so we're moving past this bubble of okay, there's a select few here. They're really powerful users. They're very loyal. They're very vocal. They're very high signal, and we're moving to a point of there are people with a lot of things on their mind and a lot of other things they do, and they're interested. But how do we relate to them? So that's why I think now is really important for the entire industry, no matter if you're in the Aptos ecosystem, Solana ecosystem, Ethereum ecosystem, to all kind of come together and start to explain this thing in uniform terms so that, at the end of the day, this blockchain can be widely accepted and adopted.
Yeah, yeah, great point. Um, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, Congress gets everything through this year. It'll be amazing for this industry. It feels like this could be part of the next economic boom, kind of what happened after legislation was passed in 1996 for the internet and just opening up all types of innovations and wealth creation. So I'm really excited. It was certainly really rough over the past 4 years, but brighter days are ahead.
Hey, we're still here, Tony.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man. So I got some wrap-up questions here for you. First, if you could create your own metaverse, what would the theme be?
If I could create my own metaverse, the theme would be nature.
Nice. Rapid fire questions. Favorite food?
My favorite food is pizza. Come on, man. New York.
For sure. Favorite musician or band?
My favorite musician is wow, that's so hard to answer. But I will say Sturgill Simpson.
Favorite movie?
Glengarrigan Ross.
I don't think I've heard of that. I got to check that out.
You have to check it out. Classic.
Favorite book?
My favorite book is, and you're catching me on not reading enough. I mean, can I count Twitter threads? Can I say that's one of my favorite books?
Honestly,
Um,
I've been saying like podcasts lately because I haven't really read a book, but podcasts, have been helpful in learning
my
things.
favorite book, or let's say the one that influenced me the most professionally, is Old Man and the Sea.
Ah, and when you're not working at Aptos, what are you doing for fun?
I'm blessed to have a beautiful family, so I spend as much time as I can watching my kids grow up and making memories with my wife.
That's awesome, man. Ash, pleasure chatting with you. We're gonna have to do the next one in person because we're not far from each other, and where you guys are located. And I'm looking forward to the future updates around Aptos. But thank you so much for joining me.
Appreciate you, Tony. Thanks for the time.